Welcome back to the channel, guys. I hope you're having a great day. And let's talk about it, guys. The Peacemaker season finale, season 2. How did it go? How do you feel about it? I thought it was pretty solid. Um, was a lot of people who didn't like it, right? And I think the controversy leading up to what we got in Peacemaker season 2 is that there are just a lot of expectations, right? For the Peacemaker TV show, especially setting up Superman 2, right? So I thought it strongly did that. I felt it did all those things great. Uh, what I think a lot of people would have liked to see, though, was some kind of big reveal, some kind of big, superhero, which I thought would have been a great treat for people. I think it would have been a good direction for James Gunn to take. He didn't take it. You go back to Peacemaker season 1, and of course, you get the situation with the Justice League arriving late after Peacemaker has defeated the Butterfly, aliens, and so on. And it's just a great ending to season 1, wanting people like, oh, this is great, I want to see more. Uh, so James Gunn didn't take that. He relied on his strong writing. It was solid, it was good, and it does set up Superman, the next one, I think, especially with what's happening with Argus and the alien technology they now have from Peacemaker to go from dimension to dimension. These 100 so rooms representing the variety of Earths right through each door, right? So these are dimensional gateways similar to the Mother Box and the technology that Darkseid uses, of course. This is the direction of James Gunn to get into the gods and monsters, the Apocalypse, Planet Apocalypse, Darkseid, Mr. Miracle, and so on, right? So all very interesting stuff. I thought it was solid, very character driven, very story driven, right? This is a television show. I think people forget that they are limited to budgets and the things that can be showed. So we got somebody like James Gunn who could do great writing. You rely on the story, and the stories are so interesting. Then you have to rely on a lot of the less CGI. You have to rely on a lot less expensive episodes, right? But you know, um, what's also I'm finding interesting uh, is the idea that James Gunn uses the television show to set up the movie, whereas this has been going in reverse, quite a bit, in which you might see something like Marvel where they'll have a big budget movie and then you get these spin-off television shows of these what would be D-list characters, right? And a lot of these TV shows bomb and people are upset about them. But maybe the idea should be maybe take the D-list television properties and translate them to or set up the big movie, do it in reverse or the right way. And I think that works a great degree better. So a lot of people were a bit underwhelmed because they wanted to see the big character reveals, right? They wanted to see some big payoff, at the end. And there is a hint of that, right? There is a hint of that. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about that dimension, salvation, right? Which is like the Earth's version of the Phantom Zone. It is a prison holding dimension for metahumans and people like this. Now that's a big thing, right? Because in the comic books, right, um, if James Gunn's on a course to pursue gods and monsters, you had Darkseid, right, who's training his parademons in these dimensions, these prison-like dimensions, and of course you also have all of your villains, right, your big villainous characters on trapped in this dimension. And as you can see in the comic here, you got all these various characters: Lex Luthor, Catwoman, the Joker. All of them basically trapped in a prison planet, trying to fight for their survival. So now you're getting kind of like one of those escape from New York type scenarios, right? And imagine Superman somehow ends up here or whatnot, or they have to go in there for some reason to retrieve some, stop somebody. I'm not exactly familiar with what happens in the comic books, but I think the idea of Peacemaker in that way was to set that up. And you do hear the monster screaming in the background. I don't know if those are like the parademons or some other type of creatures that are native to that dimension, right, to that place. But you do get that, and as I understand, that's all relative to the comics, right? What happens there. So this opens up so many possibilities for the James Gunn universe, right? And that is the exciting part, and what a lot of people miss in the Peacemaker season finale, because it didn't give you, it set it up, right? Rick Flag Sr., basically, going to the Pentagon and the government and saying, hey, we need to basically set this up. We don't have the facilities to hold these powerful metahumans. We don't know who we might get, and how are we going to be able to entrap them in this world, right? Or contain them, right? So we got to send them off planet. And so I thought that was awesome, right? Of course, a little bit more hinting of that in the show. Just give the people some. If you just kind of see one character standing off in the background back there, right, or something like that, just to excite the people, and that wouldn't cost a lot of money, right? But anyway, I like the setup. But now let's talk about this situation with James Gunn and Warner Brothers, right? A lot of people are saying he's going to be fired, or he's already fired. But I'm going to talk about why I think that that's likely not the case, or if it was, it would probably be a bad idea. All right, Peter Safran, James Gunn heading up to DCU, right? And the choices and decisions made with Peacemaker. So the rumors out that James Gunn could possibly be fired because Warner Brothers being sold, be acquired likely by the Ellises, right? Of the Ellises, of one of the richest, who was for a few minutes the richest man in the world. The Ellis of Oracle, the tech billionaire, and so on, right? Acquiring Warner Brothers, right? And one in that DC property, a very big cornerstone of Warner Brothers, Batman, Superman, and those properties, right? So they want all that. Of course, the situation is James Gunn. When people acquire things, do they change things? Yes, they change things because they spent a lot of money and businesses want to make money back, right? Are James Gunn hitting the numbers, right? In some ways, yes. Maybe some people would say in some ways, no. With Superman, seemed to do very well domestically, right? Outperformed like all the Marvel films. So this is still a very valuable property. I thought James Gunn did a pretty darn good job, all things considered. With the headache and his neck snapping of keep changing, keep rebooting these universes in such a very short period of time, right? And so that brings me to my next point, and that is, if you're making money, if you're turning profits, and you're probably a straight businessman like the Ellises are, these aren't going to be guys who are going to be comic book savvy. Likely, they're probably not going to be really caring that much about comic books and so on, right? Over the dollar signs. And if you're looking at James Gunn's record compared to other comic book movie properties and so on, his history to make billion-dollar franchises and such, you're probably not going to want to get rid of this guy. The headache of trying to redo this thing, reboot. What are you going to do? You're going to get rid of James Gunn, and you're going to try to bring in someone else that, even if they might share your vision, still may not be able to deliver on this. So do you want to go with the stability of making money like what you got with James Gunn, or do you want to try to start an entire all over. I just don't think the Ellises are going to think that's a good idea to do that. Now, they might make some adjustments at DC. You know, James Gunn could find himself, not fired, but he could probably find himself in a less, worst case scenario where some of his decisions might need to be filtered, a bit through more people or board, right? But even so, in that, it's probably not going to work if you're going to try to change the James Gunn formula. So I would say the likelihood of that happening is very small. More than likely, I think they're going to just keep things as they are. They're going to see what happens with these next two releases. And I think they're going to be quite successful for what they're going to cost. Because I got a feeling that, for some reason, I got a feeling that these films are going to be very profitable. I don't think they're going to cost an entire lot of money. And, and that's probably going to be good for the business bottom dollar of the Ellises. As far as comic book fans go, I think that James Gunn fans are going to continue to rock with him. I'm addicted to his writing and all his stuff. I do think he goes a little too far with the comedy, but even that's growing on me now. I've just accepted that all these things can exist in the superhero universe James Gunn has created. It could be the wacky zaniness. Somehow he manages to put all those elements in, and it's acceptable. We saw what happened with the Snyderverse when you tried to be all serious like it. The Snyderverse tried to be an all serious superhero, Christopher Nolan, Batman type thing, and it as much as I wanted it to work, as much as that's what I wanted to see, I think we just have to accept that the fantastical world of superheroes, that certain things in those elements are just never going to be groundable, right? And so when you accept that, you can accept that you can have serious superheroes interacting with very comic booky, wacky, zany superheroes, right? That you can have the dark humor and you can have serious emotional stories and connections like what we got between Superman and Lois. They existed in a comic booky zany world, but when they were together, right, you could feel a very human, very relatable set of circumstances with his relationship between Superman and Lois. So those are all things you have to keep in mind. But I don't think James Gunn's going to be fired or even threaten to fire. I think that this is the wishful thinking of, people who probably want the Snyderverse to come back, right? Let's face it, like most of the negative energy comes from the Snyderverse and all those, people who rock with James Gunn who were underwhelmed by this finale, right? Many of us thought it could have, been more. At the end of the day, it is a television show, and so a television show limited by budget, right? Limited by all those things like you're going to have all these people show up, going to have to do a lot of CGI and so on. And maybe James Gunn was thinking like, okay, if I show them this, they'll get the clues. We're going to put all that in the upcoming Superman, Supergirl movies, and you're going to be able to tie everything back to, Peacemaker. He's walking around Salvation. He's stuck there now with what's going to be all these metahumans coming in. So he's going to be stuck in this world. And these metahumans are going to be pouring into there, right? So that's going to be you got to admit, that's going to be very interesting to see. That's all I got to say in this episode. Guys, tell me all what you think about Peacemaker season finale and where you think this is all going. Until next time, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, so on. Take care of yourselves and each other.